Kongres Współpracy Transgranicznej Lublin 2022. Bezpieczeństwo i solidarność. Coroczne spotkanie praktyków współpracy transgranicznej z Unii Europejskiej i Partnerstwa Wschodniego. 3 dni paneli, spotkań i debat liderów samorządowych, organizacji pozarządowych i ekspertów z całej Europy. Forum partnerów. Giełda grantodawców. Wizyty studyjne, warsztaty, koncerty i spektakle. Na żywo i online. Lublin, 5-7 października 2022. Zarejestruj się bezpłatnie na stronie kongres.lublin.eu.
Zapraszamy Państwa na ostatni panel w dniu dzisiejszym. Można powiedzieć, na koniec, na deser zostawiliśmy to, co najważniejsze.
Well, let's have a dessert. We talk about administration and courts in Ukraine, and we'll have a look how they operate in the time of the war. Well, the proper operation of administrative courts is absolutely fundamental to a rule of law, to the operation of a democratic state.
Dla Ukrainy ogromnym wyzwaniem.
And for Ukrainian administration,
ten system
it's been a great challenge to keep the system running during hostilities in the country.
zaproszonym.
So I want to thank at this moment to all guests who have joined us. We have 3
perspektywy
ladies sharing their perspectives,
funkcjonowania
talking about different administrative bodies in Ukraine and in Poland. We will have a Polish perspective, the patent office and how it worked with the Ukrainian vis-a-vis during the war, and how the whole cooperation unfolded. The first speaker will be Olesya Radyshevska,
Sądu Najwyższego.
judge at the Supreme Court of Ukraine.
Co władze Ukrainy
Olesya, tell us what the Ukrainian authorities did to face the expectations, to face the challenges after the outbreak of the war.
Słychać?
Hello, can you hear me well?
Dobrze, świetnie.
Great. So, hello again.
Siedzę w Kijowie, także
I'm in Kiev at the moment. It's raining now. So accept my greetings. I have my job at court, so I'm not able to be there. But sooner or later, I believe we will make it.
powiem, że
And
ja będę próbować
first,
toczyć rozmowy w języku polskim.
I'll try to speak Polish.
Czy
If I encounter some problems, or you tell me that you cannot follow,
język polski.
then I will take the liberty of perhaps switching into Ukrainian. Well, Polish is not my first language. I've been listening to your speakers today.
się powiedział,
In the previous panel, the colleague from Olsztyn pointed out that the subject of the Congress and discussion of Ukrainian-Russian war
rozszczeplu.
is held really at a macro level.
Politolodzy może myślą o
Political scientists, they perhaps ask themselves the question why the war started, how to end it, what conditions are there, or what about disinformation? And we lawyers, we have a different view of the war, because the first question now is what next? What can we do today
ludzi, którzy mieszkają
to make this country
w spokojny sposób. Oczywiście
peaceful, as safe as possible? So a number of challenges, but I will try
statystyki, bo
to share some figures, some statistics. Statistics sometimes tells you a lot about the reality, about where we are, not necessarily telling why things are going on.
jeżeli można
But still, I have a presentation that I'd like to share with you. So I'm now I'll try to share my screen, so be patient. Can you see it?
Olesiu, na razie nic nie widać.
No, we can't see it yet.
Już chwila. A teraz?
Tak.
Dobrze.
What about now?
Ja może zacznę od takiej refleksji osobistej.
So I will share my personal reflection on the 24th of February.
Dla każdego Ukraińca.
For every Ukrainian, this day will stay in our memory forever
Zmiany życia.
as something that marks a complete change of personal life, family life, professional life.
Może jakichś takich zrozumieniu, dlaczego i kto jest, dlaczego.
And perhaps on this date we managed to understand why we live in this country, why we are Ukrainians.
Trochę szerzej.
And of course we look broader, and
Prawa człowieka było jak najbardziej chronione.
our point is to protect human rights to the greatest extent possible. So on the 24th of February, martial law was introduced in the country.
Na system prawny,
Formally
szczególnie
speaking,
na postępowanie sądowe w żaden sposób
that situation did not affect pending procedures and the operation of courts, because Ukrainian law on martial law
jakikolwiek
says that
w warunkach stanu wojennego
under martial law it is forbidden to shorten court proceedings. And also Ukrainian constitution says that everybody has the right to trial, and this right is protected even during warfare. But of course, in practice, it may look differently. There were many challenges, and
chcieli przyjąć decyzję.
the court administration and the state administration took decisions to continue the statehood intact,
Na początku marca.
and it was the beginning of March when the decisions were made.
Momentów może trochę pesymistycznych, ale żeby pokazać skalę, jak to wygląda i
So let me start with a rather pessimistic view
właśnie tutaj
and go back to the beginning of the war. You can see the pictures of court buildings in Borodyanka, in Mykolaiv
w Charkowie.
and Kharkiv.
Niektóre budynki
These are just a few pictures that I found on the internet
mówiły o skali zniszczenia.
that give you an idea of the scale of destruction.
Jest zniszczony budynek, to
And if a building is destroyed,
są
then of course the court cannot
bardzo utrudnione.
cannot operate.
Daję taką statystykę, że
So,
wojny
speaking of statistics, at the beginning of the war,
rzec kwiecień
in March, April,
była apelacja
14% of courts at different levels did not administer justice. They stopped operating for various reasons, like there was no venue, there was no building to meet to settle disputes. Sometimes they
niektóre
had no internet connection, or, for example, it was too dangerous
takich miejsc
for the people to come
w momencie
to court,
będzie
and at the same time 11%
zniszczony. A to
of court buildings were destroyed, 83 buildings to be precise.
organu publiczny, który działa na rzecz sądownictwa, to jest Państwowa Administracja Sądowa.
State court administration of Ukraine
Miesiąc temu powiedział,
about a month ago attempted to sum up what destruction had been done so far and what to do to reverse to repair this situation.
co jest 3
They
miliony dolarów.
said
Nie?
$42 million is needed to rebuild court infrastructure only. Another challenge
Oczywiście
faced,
z tego, że nie było możliwości.
and it started with,
Widać ten drugi slajd?
can you see the next slide?
Aha, okej, dobrze, dziękuję.
The one with the map, yes. Go ahead.
Że stało pytanie o zmianie właściwości.
The next question was the territorial competence or jurisdiction of certain courts. The areas painted green,
Żytomierski,
like
Kijowski,
Żytomir, Kiev,
Charków,
Chernihiv, Sumy, Kharkiv, Zaporozhia, Kherson.
terytorium okupowane przez
These areas were occupied
rosyjskie.
by the Russian army.
Pierwszym, co postało pytanie
So the first question
najwyższego
was
o zmianie tej właściwości,
to change jurisdiction of courts,
które zadeklarowane jest w Konstytucji
so that the right to trial
Europejskiej było
contained in the European Constitution and relevant European laws should be somehow maintained. So about 26%, in other words, 200 courts lost
stanu.
their territorial competence because of the shifting borders. But, as you know, we have been able to regain a large part of our territory,
Tą właściwość
and that jurisdiction returned and judges returned to their original
sądów
seats.
stanem na 20
And
mamy już
on the 20th of September,
okupacja Chersonu.
it was so, as in the map. Well, Kherson and the region are still occupied. The courts, Ukrainian courts, do not operate there. Judges from that area and from Zaporizhia, partly Donetsk, were delegated to move to other regional courts,
To jest też wielki dramat, bo
which is, of course, really terrible and dramatic for many people.
w różnych informacyjnych portalach o tym, że właśnie Rosjanie chcą złapać takie
You know that Russians were very often
na swoich ludzi i tak
trying to detain Ukrainian judges,
pracują w regionach Ukrainy,
but many of them managed to escape and move to other parts of Ukraine.
które mówię,
So,
wyglądają tak, jak już powiedziałem.
again, a few statistics.
Proszę zwrócić uwagę na tą dużą liczbę.
Look at this big figure in the middle, 3,866,671 cases. This is the number of court decisions were issued by courts after the war. This is the statistics up to 3 days ago.
To jest olbrzyma ilość.
So a huge number of cases.
Sędziowie są wierni swojej przysiędze.
So it shows that judges are faithful to their oath. They stay where they are supposed to be.
Powiem tak, że na swoim
They continue to discharge their duties.
pracują, żeby otrzymać to właśnie victory, o którym
And they work for victory as every other Ukrainian, I believe,
jako sędzia sądu
since the end of February. As a judge of the Supreme Court, I'd like to speak about my institution in the first place, but this slide gives you an idea
dużo mniej spraw,
that we don't have much fewer cases compared to the previous year.
że ponad 2,4 miliony w sądach
More than 2,400,000 cases cleared in common courts,
spraw w sądzie,
100,000 cases
że system sądowy
reviewed by the Supreme Court. So we can say the judiciary in Ukraine is working.
jest możliwe.
So 100,000 cases over 8 months. So how is it possible for the Supreme Court to handle it?
Sądownictwo jest po
Well, fortunately or unfortunately,
człowieka
in our system,
mniejszych
we defend human rights
osoby nigdy nie jest naruszenie jego prawa czymś nieważnym.
at every possible level. For everyone, violating their laws is something really serious. And we want every person to feel the support of the state, to feel that if their rights are violated, they can have protection.
Sposób jako sędzia sądu
And
czego
as a judge
powiem
of the Supreme Court in its administrative division,
administracji publicznej Ukrainy, żeby oni taki przestrzegali te
we also watch Ukrainian administration to observe the laws, including constitution.
100,000 spraw
So 100,000 cases handled
przez
in my institution by the judges of the Supreme Court. This is really a lot of work done by 182 judges, and this is more or less the structure of our model.
mamy pod jedną parasolą
This, what you can see is the status for 2016. We have administrative panel,
Paną Izbę Wielką,
economic
przedstawicieli
divisions, and the so-called Grand Chamber that has representatives of all jurisdictions and fields of law.
Instytut podaje taką statystykę
The statistics here is by courts.
to
We
właśnie
have the Court of Cassation,
proszę zwrócić,
which is part of the Supreme Court. Look at
ma kasacyjny sąd administracyjny, to jest
the
1460
Administrative Court of Cassation, more than 21,000 cases. When I speak to Polish colleagues, when they look at these figures, they can't believe it. They can't believe
za 8
so many cases can be handled over 8 months.
nadchodzi i tyle.
That we even have this amount of cases.
No, ale to jest taka właśnie pobudowy sądu i w ogóle sądownictwa.
But, well, this is, I would say, the specificity of our country. Many complaints are submitted. There are 153 people in the administrative division of the Supreme Court, and we try to do our best.
Na przykład
Well, some more figures, statistics for the last week.
prawie
26,000
trafiły do naszej jurysdykcji
cases filed
rozwiązań.
to different jurisdictions, 74 cleared over a week.
Oczywiście tutaj ja nie podaję zdjęcia nie dlatego,
I'm not showing you these pictures
żeby pokazać prawdę
to boast how brave we are, but well, indeed, this was how we operated at the beginning of the war.
mieć mniej najpierw dlatego, że
There were, of course, fewer cases
i każdy budynek
investigated because of security of people, and every court building as a decision-making center in every town was a strategic building and at risk of bombing, at risk of shelling by the Russian army. That's why we had fewer sittings, but today we have 7 sessions. Is this a lot? It's more or less a standard plan, a daily plan, which was the same before the war. And those sandbags are still there.
mają co do powiedzenia i do przemyślenia.
They keep reminding us what kind of job we do, how important it is.
Że mamy pewne trudności.
Well, we do experience difficulties. Security is one thing and safety of participants is one thing, but we also try to promote
Rozpatrywanie sprawy w trybie wideokonferencji.
Remote sessions.
Parę lat, możliwość wykorzystania wideokonferencji przez uczestników.
At some point, a few years ago, we started to use video conferencing in some sessions. it was the pandemic. Many people were not able to come to court.
Tutaj
The building was sometimes closed.
ile
So some figures of how many cases were resolved remotely.
to są sprawy z kasacyjnego sądu karnego, więc
So 1,776. This was the
swoją
penal court.
trzymają
Criminal cases are very specific.
sąd
Very high standards must be met.
wykorzystuje tą
But that court of cassation
spraw.
was very busy, so they decided to work online and do some sessions remotely.
Państwo, mamy inną opcję, jeżeli ktoś się nie
There is also another option if somebody may not reach the court building.
udział pierwszy jako uczestnik w takiej sprawie przez wideokonferencję.
They can join a video conference, or if
Daje stronę władze są
the case is particularly interesting,
oglądać przez YouTube'a.
then everybody can check our YouTube website to follow the proceedings and see, for example, how it is resolved. So we try to be open to Ukrainian society, and the parties to trials don't object that. Another thing we promote is e-courts. E-courts
2016
was originally introduced in 2016.
potrzebuje
This system needs a lot of funding to
tego systemu
work well,
się
so that
przystanę.
all the modules of the system are used by the participants to the best effect. And
Imponuje
one of the things that really impresses session participants is that you can stay at home, sit in your kitchen and talk to the Supreme Court about your case. And another thing, you will pay less court fees or legal fees because you don't have to come here, so you do not generate costs for the court. And court and case files are scanned and are kept by the court in a digital form.
duże problemy z
In 2014, we had some problems in the area of Donbas. We were not able to
akta zostali na
collect
no i
our old files. Some of the files perished on the occupied territory.
od dłuższego czasu wszystko
So for some time, we have decided to digitize,
przyjmowane
scan and digitize files, court files, and keep them on special hard disks.
moment, który zaprowadzili sędziowie z sądu cywilnego.
And also our colleagues from the civil court,
Zawiadomienie
they say that even
możesz dostać
case notifications can be sent as text to a mobile phone. Well, the interested party should only officially consent to this kind of messaging,
czy innych
because some of our codexes,
nie ma tej
code of
możliwości.
civil procedures or administrative code, for example, they don't provide for such possibilities to inform people about pending cases.
Ułatwia życie.
And what makes a lawyer's life certainly easy
Rejestru sądowego.
is access to National Court Register.
Powiem tak, że na początku kwietnia, w końcu kwietnia, na początku
In April, in early May, this system started after being shut down for 2 months for safety reasons.
decyzję wydał.
Here you can see
Nazwiska sędziów,
who made which decision. You can browse by the names of judges.
można się
The system is up and running. Everybody can log in to
zobaczyć, jak.
read case law, to
Także to
see the context or the background of different disputes. That's also a very interesting resource.
jakoś tutaj bardzo szybko powiem, że
So besides, we have some other state registers that make it easier for our lawyers to work.
na początku kwietnia
Some of them were also shut down at the beginning of in March and at the beginning of April. Many have restarted
nimi
operating and are readily accessible. Now, a few words about challenges.
wszystkich
What worries everyone,
na co dzień z tym mieć.
but of course we have to live with this, we have to work.
Pierwsze, jak już powiedziałem, to bezpieczeństwo.
So the first thing is the safety of participants.
Syrena pośrodku posiedzenia.
So sometimes in the middle of a court session, there is a raid alarm, so we have to go to shelters. We adjourn the session
Umawiamy jeszcze stronę
and we agree on another time, another date with the parties.
przedłużenie terminu sądowego.
Next thing is prolonged court deadlines.
Zależy
We have 30, 60 days
podanie,
of time limits depending on the types of cases.
to jest utrudnione.
During the war, such cases are difficult to go on with.
Wysłać tą paczkę. Jeżeli już
If you want to send a parcel, for example, you have to go to the post office and post it. But if there is no more post office because it's been bombed, you will not go there. And it's the same with courts.
stoi nie na
So it was difficult, of course, to keep the time limits. So it wasn't a priority at the early stage of the war.
często, że są
Some other situations, well, we do have organizational issues. This may be related to insufficient personnel because many people left.
problemy internetowego.
Also, there are issues with connectivity, not enough funds to run courts, not enough funds to pay for example, for correspondence.
Terytorialne, że osoba musi jechać
Plus,
do regionu, na przykład
territorial shifts. Sometimes citizens have to go to another region, another area to submit a letter to a court. And
się wojna
when the war started in February,
stały na początku Kijowa,
a few days after, first tanks appeared in the outskirts of Kiev. We started to destroy documents.
dokumentacja może
We didn't want the files to be taken over by the enemy.
nie w sądzie bez adwokata. W Ukrainie jest
Then another problem was lack of representation in court, lack of defense counsel. Basically, in Ukraine, with some categories of offenses, you cannot appear before court without a lawyer, without a barrister.
w tych czasach jest utrudnione.
Now it's more difficult to find a counsel, to find someone to defend your case. It's difficult to pay a fee. That's why many people,
Podają
very often, more often than ever, people write court documents, applications, letters on their own.
w innych sprawach. Staramy się jak najbardziej
So we try to do our best to reduce formalities, reduce the burden for citizens. On the other hand, trying to keep up the standards of procedures with every type of proceedings. The point is
ochrony
to secure people's rights the best we can. That's the
sądownictwa
first priority.
krajowego
And of course,
oraz Komisji.
our upcoming challenges is the reform of the
Będzie krótko.
National Judiciary Council and few other administrations,
Przeprowadzonych
but we started the process already.
kto będzie w tych organach, ale
We don't have the personnel for these new bodies yet, but they are very relevant.
Muszę
Well, Professor, I'm sorry,
właśnie
I have to interrupt. We have 2 minutes,
się odezwać.
no more.
ja
Yes,
uniwersytetu.
remember, I'm a university professor and I keep the track of time. I can promise this. So the very last comment.
Na froncie rzeczywistym
And yes, well, we are We have 4 colleagues from the Supreme Court who joined the army. 15 of our personnel have also joined the army,
sędziów ogólnie w całej
and more than 60 judges from all over Ukraine also are also in the army.
około 4
Judges agreed to have up to 60% of their salaries
popieramy jak możemy. My pracujemy
taken away for military purposes.
sądownictwo,
So I know
o którym już powiedziałam.
the Ukrainian judiciary keeps working as it was before the war, except for a couple of regions. We strongly believe in victory. We are already planning how to rebuild our infrastructure, our system. So thank you very much for letting me say a few words. I'm here with you to answer questions. And of course, we'll keep listening to your conversation. I'm very happy that so many interesting topics are being discussed at the Congress. And I want to send my regards to our Polish colleagues at the Supreme Court in Poland and the Chief Administrative Court, and all Poles who also fight with us on this front of Russo-Ukrainian war.
Wyczerpujące, rzetelne przedstawienie.
Our thanks go to you, Professor, for this comprehensive picture of the Ukrainian judiciary, and to keep within time limits, just as you did. Let me have another speaker, and we'll switch now to the administrative authorities. The Intellectual Property Protection Office of Ukraine. It was for a reason that I picked up this office. I'm close to this topic. Also, it's of utmost importance during the wartime, especially for the business sector. Business is business and needs to, the show must go on. So thank you very much for having accepted my invitation.
Do spraw ochrony
The Intellectual Property Protection Office is represented by Deputy Director General
pani Okseniuk.
Margarita Okseniuk.
Дякую. Дозвольте мені розпочати від імені усього колективу Укрпатенту.
Let me first
Та підтримку за
speak on behalf of my office and thank you for the support
окремо б я хотіла подякувати
that you have given us in difficult times, difficult conditions. Also, I would like to thank all my colleagues from Poland for the joint work in committees, in work groups, task forces at all levels of international cooperation. The most difficult times of struggle for the Kiev and Donbas oblasts. We had a lot of shipments from our friends with basic stocks and supplies for the workers, our employees, those who left for the EU, for Poland, actually got their jobs, got support. Their families were supported with a lot of coordination groups, distributing support. This is a huge aid effort for which we are really, really grateful, and we believe that this is a great contribution of the Polish nation to our joint victory over the occupiers, over the invaders. And let me say this, from the beginning of the war, from the attack against Ukraine, our organization never ceased operating. It's the team, the people that made it possible We also used the COVID pandemic experience, so we never closed our doors for a single day since then. To give you a bit of statistics on what we have accomplished, for instance, in March we received only approximately 9% of applications compared to the pre-war time. Now it's 30% more or less the level. March to May, approximately 2,000 the applications. It's like 1 month, say December 2021. So in the wartime, this number is really low. International applications keep flowing in, and it's good. We thank our international partners for that.
Стабілізувались. Ми не припинили свою роботу, продовжуємо виконувати.
We keep working in Kiev. We keep performing our functions. Now the copyrights application numbers have decreased as well. So this decrease was dramatic actually in certain months. But we also keep our work on the trademarks, inventions, and patents. So nothing has changed in this respect to us. I mean, we do our work as we should be. There have been some changes as well, because the postal system could not operate at all within the first months of the war. The applicants were given the electronic channels of communication to use, and they could both send in and receive responses to the applications. So we operate under the Act on the protection of intellectual property of April this year. This is the specific provisions for the wartime, and were enacted just to prevent any loss of intellectual property during the state of war. And as to the work with Russian applicants, we actually follow the guidelines of the Political Council of Ukraine, adopted in March this year. So we actually deliver on the discharge our obligations if with the parties originating or seated in the aggressor country. And now we also use kind of mixed or hybrid sessions, in-person and online, for the comfort of both participants and the attorneys. All right, just to quote some statistics for the applications that we have processed, that we have rejected, that we have responded to. So, since the outbreak of the war, some registers could not operate. And for this reason, we felt the responsibility to keep the intellectual property registers and trademark registers running, because we are aware that it's key. The full security was given to our data systems for filings, for notices, for applications, for responses, and so on. It was a global effort that made it possible for us to then keep going. If pre-war, the share of the written or paper applications and electronic versions were more or less the same. It was 100% electronic after the outbreak of the war, within a couple of weeks. In the state of war, we continue to be employed as public servants. So there are a lot of threats to our safety, to security. So part of our staff still work from home, and part on site in our offices in Kiev. So for security reasons, safety reasons, they stayed at home, but were contacted regularly, and younger associates visited them regularly. Delivered food, drinks. We supported our branch offices in the different oblasts. We also supported our armed forces, collecting and materials, supplies, and raising the funding. We actually provide direct services for the intellectual property. The officers, some of them have joined the army. The objective is to process as much as possible of workload, so that the whole country can keep going.
Zastanawiałam się do naszego panelu. Zastanawiałam się, jak wojna wpłynęła na...
All right, and the number of applications, the number of service or trade marks must have been impacted during the wartime. And I actually asked this question to the Intellectual Property Office, and I got the response quite quickly. And the data show that despite the war, the intellectual property protection is given high priority. There's no difference within the 6 months before the war and 6 months period after the war, after the outbreak of the war, in terms of the number of applications. So the awareness in the field of the intellectual property protection, especially among businesses, is quite high, and let's hope it will continue to be so. Now, I'm curious about our Polish patent office that is represented here by Anna Dachowska. Hello and welcome. Director for International Cooperation. I asked Ms. Director for the similar data for patent applications and the trademark applications made by Ukrainian entities. Can you give us some data? First of all, thank you very much for inviting me, for having this the discussion on the judiciary and the administrative system. I would like to stress, while intellectual property or protection of intellectual property may not be deemed a priority in the wartime, it is key for the economy. SMEs especially, are aware how important it is, and it also translates into innovation levels. That's why, when we talk to our counterparts, within the EU and internationally, we are really impressed how Ukrainian Intellectual Property Office could keep their operations, without any interruptions, taking care of of the interests of businesses. So I have prepared the analysis you mentioned. So as for inventions, there are no major differences. There are no. We don't have a lot of applications from Ukraine. There's a slight drop but this drop has been recorded since 2020. So we may think this is due to the pandemic before the outbreak of the war as well. Utility the models, the smaller drop, so it's more or less the same level. As to the trademark applications, it may be surprising to you, but we had only 5 applications in 2021, but 15 in 2020. So perhaps the number itself is not higher, but the incremental growth is visible. Really, it may be due to a lot of small businesses, are being set up by Ukrainians in Poland. Perhaps some direct investments from Ukraine, also coming to Poland. These are the first statistical data to share. But back to the point, in the context of functioning of the judiciary and administration authorities, could you tell us how the Polish Patent Protection Office alone and perhaps in cooperation with its counterparts globally, other international organizations, has helped, is helping and will help its Ukrainian counterpart. And let's hope it will end soon. Let's hope we'll do our utmost to support you as long as we can and as long as it takes, really. The support that we have given, I would divide into 3 categories. First of all, international levels, task groups on, the intellectual or industrial property protection agendas. Within the EU, there are 38, members there. So we try to coordinate all the support activities. Since from the beginning of the war, we were involved in deliveries of medicines, medical supply,
do Kijowa, do Ukrainy, a jednocześnie też pomagaliśmy
the basic stocks, staple foods and so on to Ukraine. And we also coordinated support to people coming to Poland in cooperation, in consultation with various organizations across Europe. And I hope these efforts will continue. Another level, it's legal assistance, especially to refugees, people fleeing Ukraine. And we have actually, made some changes. Our legislation, domestic legislation, gives us autonomy in deciding certain things. For instance, we can, extend the time limits. We actually made this decision that in the case of Ukrainian entities, because of the difficult, exceptional, extraordinary situation and at our eastern border, we extended the deadlines. At the same time, where these deadlines were not kept, applicants could request, restoration of the dedeadline, for instance. So all these options are now available to Ukrainians. At the same time, as the patent office, we browse through our patent registrations and applications, as to make sure that all offices around the world actually respect the internationally recognized Ukrainian borders. And based on that, I hope that our collaboration with Ukrainian the office will actually grow and develop. Of course, within the EU, there's an ongoing debate on how to treat the applications coming from Russia. So this is an EU-wide solution that is coming. Could you talk about a bit more about sanctions? Sanctions are regulated at the EU level. We work with the European Commission in this regard. As the Patent Office, we have received a number of applications that can be sanctioned. We are in close consultation with the European Commission. The European Commission has given its guidelines, so we act together as 27 member states, respecting the internal EU regulations set by the European Commission.
Dziękuję. Drodzy Państwo,
Thank you very much. So, to respect the time limits for this panel discussion,
ja nie chcę zadawać
well, I won't have any more questions now, but I would like to encourage you
głosu
to give your comments
własności.
or questions about the intellectual property protection. Perhaps it's not a very popular topic, but it has an impact on our everyday life. And in the context of continued operation of the Ukrainian Intellectual Property Protection Office, perhaps it's worthwhile considering filing an application to that, just to support them. And perhaps there are some questions to the representative of the Supreme Court of Ukraine. So I would encourage you, please grab the opportunity to ask the Ukrainian Supreme Court a question.
Czy ktoś z Państwa z sali?
Anyone.
Nie? Czy ktoś z moich panelistów, ze względu na te limity, które mieliśmy w trakcie
Anyone of the panelists
wprost 15 minut i ani minuty dłużej.
we agreed it would be just 15 minutes and not more, not longer. Just one sentence as to the intellectual property. I'm not an expert in this regard, in this field, but I can tell all of you that back in 2017, in 16 actually, there was a major judicial reform started, and one of the objective was to set up an intellectual property court as a special unit. 21 employees, competitive procedure for appointment of judges who had to have documented experience and expertise in the discipline, in the field. And at the end of 2018, the Intellectual Property Court was registered as a legal person. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic and the war now, this institution is active on paper only, but I hope that it will actually start its physical operations very soon. Let's hope it will happen. Let's all hope it will happen, not only for the interest of the Ukrainian society, Ukrainian state, but the investors and businessmen from Poland and from the international arena.
Dziękuję bardzo.
There's a question from the audience. Thank you. I've got a question to
Na polszczyznę u pani, bo ja znam nazwisko.
To Mrs. Professor. How come you speak Polish so well? I know a person, at Kiev University, the Polish language studies, and the same surname as yours. And it's ingenious how you speak Polish.
Rodziny Radyszewski jest my...
Thank you. Yes, Professor Radyshevski of Kiev University is my father. But I'm a specialist in legal sciences, and he's a philologist. Well.
Centrum Prawa Polskiego.
But I used to be, the head of the Polish Polish law school at Kiev University, and I also, participated in the initiatives of a European Center of Law. So a lot of connections with Poland, and that's why I can speak Polish so well.
Pani ojca.
Many greetings, many hello to your father. We met in person. One of the best academic teachers in Kiev.
Ukraine.
Let alone perhaps in Ukraine.
nazwisko?
And what's your surname? What's your name?
Bielakowa.
Oksana Bielakowa.
Bardzo dziękuję pani profesor,
Thank you very much.
moim panelistkom.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, the speakers, and thank you for attending. Also, thank you, the organizers, for including us with this discussion in your.
Oczywiście. Dziękuję bardzo, to dla nas był
Thank you very much. It was an honor and pleasure to us. Fascinating topic to discuss. The judiciary, administrative authorities in a wartime in Ukraine. Thank you again. This is the end of today's the sessions. We would like to invite you, if you can, to theatrical performance, Alena. Then we'll have some session on the intercultural dialogue among students. And also, we would like to invite you all warmly to tomorrow's sessions.
Dobrego wieczoru, dobrej...
Have a good night, have a good evening, and see you again tomorrow. Thank you very much.
2022. Bezpieczeństwo i solidarność. Coroczne spotkanie praktyków współpracy transgranicznej z Unii Europejskiej i Partnerstwa Wschodniego. 3 dni paneli, spotkań i debat liderów samorządowych, organizacji pozarządowych i ekspertów z całej Europy. Forum partnerów. Giełda grantodawców. Wizyty studyjne, warsztaty, koncerty i spektakle. Na żywo i online. Lublin, 5-7 października 2022. Zarejestruj się bezpłatnie na stronie kongres.lublin.eu.